Okay, third video on maintenance is we're going to just visit briefly about some of the other maintenance requirements besides energy, because it is very important, although energy is the largest proportion of those maintenance requirements. But it is important to have proteins, vitamins, minerals for maintenance as well. But typically, if we meet the energy needs of those animals, we're going to meet their protein needs, their vitamin and mineral needs. So we don't worry as much about those other needs as long as we make sure energy needs are met. But we do need to check them and make sure we do have an appropriate level for those animals. Another important consideration that we need to think about and how it affects energy or how it affects nutrient requirements is climate. Climate can have a great effect on those maintenance energy requirements of these animals. All mammals are homeotherms, meaning they try to maintain a consistent body temperature. And so they've got to maintain that constant body temperature. In humans, it's 98.6. We talk about the ruminants, it's about 102, 102 and a half. So depending on the species you're dealing with, they're wanting to maintain a constant body temperature. When it's hot, they've got to lose heat. When it's cold, they got to produce extra heat. And so we need to understand nutritionally what we can do to help these animals out. Here in Chico, if you've stayed a summer in Chico, you realize that it gets pretty dang hot. And so we do have periods of potential heat stress in our animals that we have to watch out for. We tend not to have to worry as much about cold stress. Whereas friends of mine that work for as a feedlot nutritionist out in Iowa in the wintertime, he has to manage those animals for potential cold stress when a blizzard or a big storm comes through. Animals have a thermoneutral zone. That's their comfort zone. That's the temperature range that it's easily able to modify body temperature in response to the environment. It's where they stay comfortable. Once we get outside that thermal neutral zone, then we have some issues. In that thermal neutral zone, there's no net gain or loss of heat. And then we have what we call an upper critical temperature, which is the temperature at which the animal has to really work to be able to get rid of excess body heat. And we have a lower critical temperature, and that's where the animal has to work to keep warm. Those two, once we cross those critical temperatures, then we start having environmental impacts upon our animals' maintenance requirements. So if we take a look at what is happening in an animal, we have their thermal neutral zone right here. This is the desired place, green light for go. That's where we want to be. What happens is when we get into heat stress, then those animals have that higher increasing body temperature. Their heat metabolism starts rising as well, and we start having what we call heat stress. And ultimately, it can lead to death from excess heat. And so that's something that we have to watch. If you notice, even at the organic dairy, there are actually misters set up over the feed bunks so that during the summer when it's extremely hot here in Chico, we can try to have misters and some things to keep those animals cool. This line that crosses from that thermal neutral zone into that upper critical temperature. And that is that point. And it's going to depend on the animal, and there's a little bit of variation within there. But that's the threshold that then once we start seeing temps go above that, we have to be careful. On the flip side, it's on the other side of it, that what happens is when animals cross that lower critical temperature point, heat production also had been dropping as it approaches that thermal neutral zone. But if we back away from that comfort zone, heat production is really high in those animals. And if they go too far, they can actually hit that period of cold stress and ultimately die from the cold stress. We have decreasing body temperature and create all sorts of problems during that time. And so it's making sure that that animal, you try to maintain them for that thermal neutral comfort zone, but there are things you can do from a feeding management standpoint, and we can talk about that that can help minimize these increasing body temperatures and decreasing body temperatures and help the animal regulate. An example is, say, feedlots. If they know a storm's coming in, they will actually feed hay, a low-quality hay, and put it out for all the cattle. They fill up on that hay before the storm comes in, and the body is producing a lot more heat to digest all that fiber, the microbes in the rumen. And it allows an increase in heat production in those animals to be able to help them weather that storm a little bit better. So when we get our animals outside their thermal neutral zone, whether the higher end or the lower end, they're going to have higher maintenance energy requirements. And it's going to affect how we need to feed them. So that wraps up the maintenance part of these videos.